Hi, welcome to Paint Carry Paint. Today I am painting an alla prima portrait of my good friend Andre Melchior, who is a fantastic artist. But he agreed to sit for a painting for me today, and this painting ends up becoming quite colorful. Alla prima means to paint wet into wet. So oil painting, which this is all oil paint, will stay wet all day long, and takes at least 12, 24, 36 hours to dry depending on the paint. So wet into wet, French for alla prima is French for wet into wet painting. So any painting that's completed in one session, starting out with a sort of brown paint and trying to establish my largest shapes. And now speeding it up a bit. Because watching a painting can be a little bit like watching grass grow. So we'll speed it up for you. But starting off with my major shapes and quickly moving towards blocking in as a way to get the painting down. Mostly these are all shadow tones, and I really start pushing the color much more colorfully than I might have at other times. So whether that was the right move or not, I'm not sure, but you'll see in the end kind of where it ends up. And sometimes my paintings can be very, like almost too colorful, I'm realizing. And at other times, I can be much more muted. But I did learn color, a very colorful way of approaching color in general. So, with a sort of color theory that was taught by a painter named Henry Henschke. Henry Henschke, Henschke. He's passed away at this point, but he was a teacher on the East Coast of the United States in the 70s, 80s, 60s, and influenced a lot of painters in that area of the country. My teacher, Nelson Shanks, studied color with Henschke, and it became a major part of his color in his paintings. And so I learned it from Nelson. And I also read Henschke's book on color. And there's one particular chapter called Painting a Still Life, which was very helpful. It helped it all to kind of make sense. Whereas before, I kind of got it, but I didn't totally understand it. This painting isn't really a color study. I would not say this painting is a color study. I would say it's more of a very colorful alla prima portrait. I think my next painting, I might do a hardcore color study. That'll be interesting. But for this one, this is just a fun painting that's very colorful, but also trying to be a portrait painting, trying to actually be a painting and not just an exercise, which color study is an exercise. This is a painting. But everything, all these shapes I'm using, blocking in, I'm trying to keep my shapes as accurate as possible, which is something we all learned from Charles Barg drawing course, which is a staple of all academic painting these days. So Charles Barg, Bargue, is fantastic exercises for learning proportion. So I would not be able to do this painting the way I'm painting it, so block-in oriented, almost no outlines, if it wasn't for the Charles Barg painting method. But every time I throw a shape down, it's another opportunity to have fun with some color mixture and just kind of mixing on the fly, keeping my shapes as accurate as possible. And we had a lot of fun this day, I will say. You can see Andre back there in the background. And we decided, we started off by listening to music. We were listening to some bluegrass, and then and didn't really, and that was fun, but I just felt like the vibe was a little serious. I was like, why don't let's listen to something a little lighter. And those of us who were here on this day, myself, Andre, and our good friend Justin Cap, we were like, well, let's listen to some stand-up comedy. So we listened to stand-up comedy all day. It was really pretty an enjoyable, fun day. We were all laughing all day long, laughing and painting, listening to these great stand-up comedians. Most of them I had never heard of before, but all of them were hilarious. So it made for a fun day in the studio. Andre is, did I mention this? He's an awesome artist as well. I'll put a link to his social media. But I knew I wanted this painting to be, have a lot of character, and I can see Andre laughing in the background. Just have a lot of character and have a lot of color and have a lot of life, which I think is kind of Andre. Andre's got, he's a fun, warm person to be around, and I wanted to try and have the portrait have that quality, and that's what I was going for, anyways. And as I'm blocking in faster and faster, this painting is progressing. You're painting the earring there. I knew I had to get his earrings in there because it just adds so much to the character of the portrait. But at this point, I've got my shadows blocked in, I've got my light mask blocked in, I've got my halftones blocked in, I've got my lighter lights indicated, my dark accents, getting a sense of the form. You can tell the light is coming from the left-hand side where the stronger light is, and then turning away from the light source, you're getting into the dark lights and the halftones on the right side of the face, turning into shadow on the right side of the face. Where you're there getting a form shadow turn. There's a few cast shadows like coming off the nose, the bottom of the nose, for example. So value is obviously very important here. Value, color, shapes, accuracy of shapes. Always knowing where you are with your values. When you're modeling, like where on the surface are you? Are you in the light? Are you in the shadow? If you're in the light, is it a dark light? Is it a mid light? Is it a lighter light? Is it a lightest light? Is it a highlight? And the same thing in your shadows. Is it a halftone? Is it a form shadow? Is it a cast shadow? All of that is keeping the train on the tracks while I drop paint down as quickly as possible. I want to get this thing covered as quickly as I can to have something to paint into. And alla prima painting, it's you are flying by the seat of your pants here. There's always mistakes. There's always problems you got to solve. Often it's drawing. I always, or anatomy or perspective. Those are always issues. You're always going to have problems that you're trying to solve, and you're painting against the clock too. Like this painting, it's going to get dark here at some point. We started painting at 9 a.m. in the morning, and I need to bring this to resolution, some sort of completion, before it gets dark. There's the other earring on the shadow side. The highlight's not quite as bright. You'll notice that some of the colors are more clean, which tends to happen in the light mask more. And then as the surface turns away from the light source and you get into those darker lights, the color gets more complicated, more murky, more muddy. I like to call it colorful mud. This is a very colorful painting. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people don't, a lot of folks don't like highly chromatic paintings. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Some folks really prefer paintings that are more limited in their color saturation and their tones, existing in the grays and the earthy colors more, which I totally get. I like that also. And I think doing some palette studies for future videos, doing some color study, palette study paintings, alla prima paintings would be very fun to explore. At this point, I have almost everything blocked in. Pretty much everything is blocked in. I see a little bit of the gray canvas coming through on that left nostril. But other than that, everything's been blocked in, and there's a layer of paint across the entire canvas at this point, which is where you want to be. Because that's where you get those beautiful, buttery, wet into wet shapes. The only way, here's real time, the only way you're going to get those beautiful, wonderful, buttery transitions is wet into wet. You can dry scumble. There's other ways to do it. This is not the only way. But this is one of the secrets in the sauce. You think about Sargent, John Singer Sargent, or Sorolla, or Richard Schmid, people who have really made alla prima painting famous. And it's beautiful to look at. It's beautiful to look at. And it's an art form. It's its own kind of art form, and I love it. I love doing it. I love the alla prima. Oh, so now we're speeding it back up here a little bit. Now that I have most of the face in and everything's sort of roughed in, now I can say, okay, I can see I can see everything's working together. My center line of the face is just turned a little bit to the right. The features are lining up fairly well. I have his head tilted back a little bit. So his nose and eyes are tilting up. His front of his face is tilting upwards a little, which is going to drop his ears down. All of that has been calibrated fairly well. So now I can go into the features and start to develop them further and have a wet layer of paint to do that into. I only have so much time for each feature. That far eye is probably pretty much done, right? Mostly the one on the right, mostly because it's in the shadow. And you don't need to develop the shadow as much. The light mass is where you do more development. But everything is wet into wet, so there's a lot of blending that happens between my planes. As I attempt to build planar structures. So this isn't blending, this is building. We're not trying to blend, we're trying to build. Which, building and creating planes and creating architecture of the surface, it's different. It's a little, not saying that you can't blend, you can blend, but blending is a part of the process. It's not the goal. I enjoy painting like this. This painting, that all the brush strokes, it kind of starts to remind me of Van Gogh a little bit sometimes, and I don't think Van Gogh is the most technically advanced painter. He's not, but he's still one of the most famous painters in the Western world. There's something very charming about his paintings. They're not pretentious. There's something very charming about them. I think that nose is almost done. And now it's like, okay, let me see if I can develop this eye a little further. We're getting pretty close here to the end. We were just flying by the seat of our pants, and it's probably about 3 p.m. right now. There's that highlight in the afternoon, and the plan was to paint till about 4. So I'm thinking, okay, I got 20 minutes to paint this eye. and then 20 minutes to paint the mouth, and then 5 minutes to fix any little issues, and then we're gonna all go get a beer. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I think I messed with this eye a little more, and I almost wish I hadn't, but that's okay. You know, I wanted this painting to have as much personality as possible. You know, Andre's got, you know, he's certainly you know, a delightful personality to spend time with, and see, I just keep, yeah, it's yeah, those highlights are okay. Anyways, getting the pupil, separating that from the iris. Okay, so here's a little bit more close up. Here's where I really developed the mouth, and this is really the last 30 minutes of the painting at this point. You know, and this is all from life, and we're listening to stand-up comedy in the background, so we're laughing, and so, you know, it's like, how do I get the structures of the mouth when the mouth is moving? And so, you know, having some familiarity with the main proportions and structures of the lips, of the mouth, etc., do help, obviously. But, you know, and then using those structures and knowing how to model that little glint on the tooth. I was just waiting for that moment. I had to wait for him to like smile again to kind of grab that. Okay, I think this is the last couple strokes, real time. Look at all that fun color. It's so fun. I think it's pretty fun. It's not moody, that's for sure. But it's fun. Thank you so much. This has been Paint Carry Paint, and please do, if you made it this far, hit that like button and subscribe, because I'm going to be coming back with more videos, and that'd be very helpful. Thank you so much, and more to come. Peace.